Okay.
Hi guys, I'm Katie Room, and this is David. And we're just going to take the opportunity to promote our ideals about indie sci-fi and fantasy and what we're trying to do with Periapsis Press by sort of talking through some of the drama that happened on Twitter today with, is it Larry?
Yep.
Larry Korea. I almost said Corona. Larry Corona.
Oh no.
I just want to say hi to Iron Age Media in the chat and Patrick. David's getting his laptop set up so that he can share his screen this time instead of me making a whole bunch of slides of tweets.
Yeah, I just gotta set up a couple things here. Hopefully we can share. We should be able to share screens in StreamYard, right?
In
the free version, yeah. I know you can in the paid version because everybody does all the time on the live streams that I watch. So,
well, it'll be an experiment.
Yep.
This, I put the link in the description. And I just want to start off by saying that Richard from Iron Age Media and a couple of other people were concerned that we were going to just dump on Larry, and that's just not the case. Like if you watched our video about Jeffro,
yeah,
you know that our drama is very
and I like, I mean, I'll just say straight up, I like Larry Korea a lot more than I like Jeffro. I mean, I always enjoy it when Larry Korea appears on, like, I've seen him, I think, on Nick Rekieta's show. I think he's been on Ethan Van Sciver's show. He's a great, like, interview guest, has a lot of nice stuff to say about the culture war. I appreciate his sort of libertarian attitude about a lot of things. He seems like a very pleasant guy usually. And I appreciate that I appreciate that kind of like happy, encouraging tone that he has a lot of the time. So I mean, I kind of agree with some of these other people who brought this up. Like, it seems a little odd, or maybe even out of character for him. But it it doesn't matter. And we're not big accounts. Right. He's sold millions of books. Like, whatever criticisms that we have of him is like, it's I'm sure it's a drop in the bucket to him.
Yeah, he already said he checked out of this whole
thing. Yeah,
so,
and that's fine. That's fine. He's he's not
right.
But we just like to, when sort of bigger accounts sort of do this kind of thing, where they jump into a conversation and kind of act in a certain way, we like to take it as an opportunity to talk about our viewpoints. And this is, again, kind of like some of these other drama things that we've covered in the past, like the Jeffro thing and like the Matt Walsh anime thing. It's something that I kind of take a little bit personally, because it's, I see what he's saying as kind of a maybe really contrary to sort of our core vision for what we'd like to see from self-publishing and indie fiction. It's not just him sort of being rude or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's he's kind of advancing a very different worldview.
Yes.
And we saw that a little bit in some of the talking past each other that went on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's kind of why we want to talk about this, and it's just fun too.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we feel that it's a good jumping off point. That's why we're doing it. We are very much about being positive. We're not looking to increase the noise and the negativity. We're genuinely going to interact with as charitable an interpretation of the arguments presented as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick says, monetize the drama. There should only be one way of thought.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to make any money off this. We're not like Eric July whatever, where we have 1,000 people in the chat giving us super chats when we disagree with people. But
yeah, I put drama in the title because last time I put drama in the title, I got what?
double the views.
Double the
So
views.
I'm sure it was just Jeffro hate watching it a bunch of times. But watch time is watch time. So
hi to Draco Nightmare and to TJ Marquis. Good to see you guys in the chat.
all right, I'm gonna just join. I was looking for a profile picture, but I misplaced it. So
Oh no. Did you turn off the mic and stuff?
yep, I've got
Okay.
my mic and camera turned off. So let's see.
Okay. Now, do you want to get your screen set up?
Yep.
Okay.
It'll just be just a second here. Okay. So if
Yeah, again, normally I do a whole bunch of slides picking out everything so that it's ready to hand. This time we're going to try and share David's screen.
Yeah, we've just been, rather than trying to prepare something, we've just been kind of enjoying the conversation throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, right. And you might have to watch the chat, because I usually watch the chat, but I don't know if I'll be able to see it.
I can try.
Actually, and let me just make sure that
Hi, Sarah.
Have this turned down. All right, and I'm just going to hide the chat on my side if you're watching it. So
somewhere there's a doppelganger of me out there. Only negative reviews of Victorian era publications.
All right. Okay. Share screen. And we're going to share. Actually, we can just share just the Chrome tab, I think.
Oh, nice.
That works.
Okay.
So.
Should I add it?
Yeah.
There we are.
All right.
How's it look, guys?
Let's go to the start of all this. I think part of why we want to do this too is it's just kind of fun to document this stuff. I mean, it might be kind of fun to look back on this in a couple of years and be like, oh, that was what we were thinking about.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna zoom in here just so that.
I'm just gonna pull up my bookmarks.
Yeah.
On my phone so that I can.
That's great. Okay. So the great thing about this particular spat too is that I think, like, compared to the whole Jeffro thing, there is not nearly as much context here.
Mm-hmm.
It literally is just like two tweets and then a nasty remark, and then it kind of evolves into a lot of interesting discussion. But
yeah,
but there's just 3 tweets here at the core of it. So it starts with JD Cowan. I think it's pronounced JD Cowan. Great tweet. If you want to write stories, then write stories. The words won't come out the way you want right away, but eventually they will. You have to keep writing and learning. It's like any other skill. Don't mystify it like Old Pub does. You can write if you really want to. That's great. Don't mystify it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
We've talked about that kind of before.
Yep. And I mean, I know for a fact that we've got different opinions about this than JD.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think JD is kind of more on the side of Jeffro than we are about kind of understanding the sources of things and wanting to write in a tradition and things like that. But this is still just a great tweet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then
Windows wants to update.
Yeah,
like,
no. So then Jay Manfred Weichsel also hops in with some helpful advice, which is self-publishing is the simplest thing in the world, but people make it. Oh, and just I wanted to mention something. I didn't get the chance to unmute people. If you see like yourself muted, or if you see people muted, it doesn't mean I don't like you. It's just I very aggressively mute and unmute people on Twitter to make Twitter more pleasant for me. So I should actually probably unmute a couple people quick, but it doesn't mean I don't like you or I dislike somebody or anything like that. It's just how I manage. People always complain about Twitter being really like I don't know, like aggravating or different things.
Yeah,
And it's really not for me because I aggressively control what I see.
Me too. Yeah.
So then J. Manfred Weichsel helpfully says, self-publishing is the simplest thing in the world, but people make it overly complex with a lot of bullshit. Write whatever you want to, put a cover on it you like, and press publish. That's literally it. And that is true. He's described the mechanics of self-publishing here. And I think in the context of the original tweet, we don't want to mystify it. Just the mechanics of it is very simple.
Yeah. So J.D. Collins was sort of about the writing aspect. Don't mystify the process of writing. And Weichsel's is about the fundamental tech basically of it.
Or and even if you want to take a wider reading of it, don't mystify the process of self-publishing, right? I think the point still stands. That's maybe true. Where it's going to come into conflict with Larry, but
yeah. So Collins is like mystifying the writing process, and Weichsel's is like mystifying the publication process, which is certainly something that Old Pub wants to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Larry Correia jumps in, and I think he must have seen this because I think Daddy Warpig retweeted it. So he comments, "Yeah, great, you published. You only left out the part where you get anybody to actually read it or pay you money for it." And this is great. So this tweet, I think, is a really good example of something I've talked about a lot, where good tweets for engagement kind of have two sides, where there's a side that's true that you agree with, but then there's sort of another side that is like either says something in a kind of a grating way or almost like misrepresents something, and it's like
or brings an attitude.
Yeah, and it's like you can't just dismiss it offhand.
Yeah,
right. You're not just saying something so crazy that it's like, well, whatever. But like it kind of gnaws at you. I think he did that with this tweet. And a lot of his followers and other people like it too. So, he beat Weichsel's original post for likes with this tweet. So it's definitely resonating with people. And then the discussion kind of goes from there, and it's a very complex discussion and response to it. I think my initial reaction was it's so over, bros. And this is a bit of a self-deprecating remark because I've had some success with my writing in terms of getting people to read it and pay for it. I haven't had a huge amount of success. And this is me kind of acknowledging that, there's an element to which, this is something that I haven't been successful at. But at the same time, my opinion about this, and I think a lot of other people sort of agree with us on, is that, in context, he was talking about sort of encouraging people to do something, right? Mm-hmm. Encouraging people to write, encouraging people to self-publish. Don't mystify it. It's not hard. Just do it. And I think that there should be more people who are just putting their interesting stuff out there, mm-hmm. and not worrying about what sells, not worrying too much about market research or writing to market or trying to make something perfect before you put it out there, because those rough edges and interesting ideas and niche things that don't necessarily have a big audience are what is really cool about indie fiction.
Yeah. Well, this whole discussion really reminds me of a tweet that I came across. Somebody kind of random on Twitter just found them through my tweet deck, who was talking about having submitted a story, a sci-fi story, and was told by friends and by at least one agent, sci-fi doesn't sell. And so the response of this writer was to shelve the book and say, well, maybe I'll self-publish someday. But it's literally you just upload it, right?
Yeah.
But there was so much anxiety about that, or an illusion of a hurdle that had to be overcome, that she shelved it and started working on a different one.
Yeah.
Hope the agent likes this one better.
And I mean, again, like the sort of dual nature of this tweet, right? It's true that there certainly is stuff that nobody's going to read, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's stuff that really shouldn't be put out there. But I think there's a lot of stuff that, is never going to have a huge audience. I mean, like even just something that people were talking about the last couple of days, and this kind of gets to your point, sci-fi and fantasy are already niche. It's not like everybody reads sci-fi and fantasy. You're already narrowing, if you wanted the absolute broadest reach, you should be writing something like, thrillers or, spy thrillers, modern day spy thrillers, or cozy mysteries or something like that. Right. So we're already talking, the context that this is happening is talking about sci-fi and fantasy writing and indie sci-fi fantasy reviews. It's like, it's already sort of a niche thing.
Yeah.
Why sort of put that burden on, and why hop into this conversation that's just about encouraging people to do something with, you have to be thinking about money. It's like, no, you don't. And there are people who don't care at all about money. It can be just a hobby. If you can write a book just as a passion project and then decide, okay, now I might want to publish it and see what it does. That's what I did with my book, right? That was a project that I had for a long time. I wrote it. As I was writing it, I started doing a little bit of research about self-publishing, and I thought, okay, I'll try to self-publish it and just see if anybody else wants to read it. And I'm glad I did, right? It went from something that was just a personal project to something that now other people have enjoyed. And, I didn't sell thousands or millions of copies of it, right? But I sold more than 10. I sold more than 100.
Sold more than 12.
Right, sold more than 12. I just got my 20th review on that book.
Yeah.
Today. And that is my first book, right? That Uriel's Revenge is the first novel that I wrote. So, I think I was in a position, and like being married to Katie, where I had somebody good that could like help me edit it and things like that. But this kind of attitude of like, oh, you have to polish everything. You have to, like later he kind of talks about just throwing malformed stuff out there. It's like, it doesn't have to be that, just because you're not trying to make money or something, it's a very weird way to think about this.
I think we were talking earlier, sort of categorizing on, this may be attributing motive to different people or whatever, but when our drama with Jeffro, sort of that whole camp sort of came from like a writing as art kind of group who were very concerned about like the quality of stuff. Would you say that's accurate?
Sorry, say that again. I was writing a reply to someone in the chat.
Like when we were in drama with Jeffro, that the group was like writing as art, concerned with like the quality and
Well, yeah, I mean, they had a different definition of quality, right?
Right.
Their definition of quality was like something that conforms to genre norms as set forth in this particular corpus of works decided by us that we're the gatekeepers of.
Yes,
right.
Sort of
they're a canon, right?
Canon, yes.
Right. If you are writing, if you're saying I'm writing fantasy, then you need to be taking inspiration from this canon that we have decided on. And if you're taking inspiration from something else, it's bad.
Right. So I still feel like that's kind of that same sort of thing, though. It's like writing as a form, as a art, as a part of something bigger. And then Larry Correia is sort of in this sort of different idea of writing as career, as a as like a product.
Yep.
And we're in a third camp, which is much more about writing as something that you do for your own personal enjoyment and fulfillment, and then with the intention of sharing that with readers.
Yeah.
And then there is less of an emphasis on you need to make money. Right. Great if it did, right?
Or even I would say, so it can be both. Like it can be both something that you value personally or something that you value personally and want to share with readers, but it can actually be both of those things without you being too concerned about making a ton of money from it.
Yes.
Right. Like you can be writing with the intention that other people are going to read it. Mm-hmm. Also without really worrying about, I have to check all these boxes to sell books, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are actually trying to be a successful indie author, and I've done a bunch of research on this, right? So I gave it a good try when my book first got some traction. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it a good try to do a bunch of things to try to turn this into something more. And they didn't work for me. And that's okay, right? But, you know, mailing lists, advanced reader copies, all kinds of different advertising and marketing schemes. Like there's tons of stuff that you have to do. And I think it's totally valid to just say, you know what? This is not my full-time job. I have a nice full-time job. I'm not going to spend my free time trying to do that stuff. I'm just going to write and put it out there. And the people who read it.
Yep. And I think being in the position that we are, sort of touching on one of my least favorite topics, as everybody knows, AI, that the anxiety that comes from the thought of AI sort of replacing part or all of the writing process is kind of alleviated, because people who are about writing as career, writing as product, money making, that's a real threat, because someone else can make it faster. And if you have a large series, there's a lot more for an AI to digest. Steal. Yep.
I went there.
And if you're from the writing as art, then you have some anxiety about whether or not AI generated content is art, right? There has to be a whole discussion. But where we're coming from is a place where creators want to create out of their own motivation.
Yeah.
So
and it's not about just like making as much stuff as you can, right? This is kind of why I like to push back a little bit against the AI as a tool for creators. It's like, well, you know, when I sit down at the end of a long day of work to make something, my goal isn't to make as much stuff as I can. It's I want to make the things that I want to make.
Yeah.
And the things that I want to make are not things I can make with AI. Right. So there's that side of it too.
Yeah. There's a sense of accomplishment of tackling your project and then sharing it, whether or not anybody actually buys it, even just to say, I did this.
Yeah.
So we're kind of coming from a different point of view in general from some of the other people who interacted with this thread even.
Should we go back to the thread? So the I wanted to show so J. Manfred Weixel, he had some really good comments on this thread, and he went back and forth with Larry a little bit, kind of pushing back on the writing advice side of it. It was kind of funny. He was accusing Larry of trying to sell a course, which I thought was funny. I really liked Jesse Lucas's whole back and forth with him the best, though, because I think Jesse's opinion is pretty well aligned with mine. Okay, so Jesse originally just kind of, rightly pushed back on just that the subject was publishing and not marketing. And in the context of like encouraging people who might have trouble starting or might feel discouraged about the whole process.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
No, I was just.
You're just throwing it up.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're getting some comments this evening kind of about like, okay, look at what Larry has done. This is a little out of character. He is having a bad day or whatever. He's talking about marketing and it's good advice. It's like the way he's like, I think Jesse's being pretty polite here, and he's just calling him calling him names and using profanity here. So he says any dipshit can write something and throw it out there on Amazon. Congrats, you're another turd in a sea of crap. Or you could realize that there's some finesse to it and do it in a way that actually works. And Jesse, again, sort of like reminding him the context is like people who don't do it at all, right? Encouraging people to start. He's kind of trying to turn this into, saying something obvious. I think this is where it went here. Actually, I'm going to have to go back to where I shared Jesse's thread because it's kind of hard to find. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So, here we go. Okay. So Jesse's like, oh, did you read his post as saying that publishing the industry is simple? Because he meant publishing the physical process, which is we're publishing at each other right now. Yeah, no one was arguing that editing, marketing, engagement, etc. are simple. Larry calls that dumb. He says, oh, was there a different way to read this? Quotes it. Because this is interesting, right? So here Larry is responding to the response to his barging into this conversation, saying we weren't talking about that. He says, okay, because even leaving out the marketing aspect, right? So he's saying, okay, marketing aside, that's still fucking bullshit advice, which makes for half-baked books with goofy covers. So even if you're a marketing wizard, good luck polishing that turd. So he's saying, okay, even the mechanics of self-publishing is complicated because you can't just throw anything up there. You have to write a good book and have a good cover, which again is true if you are trying to sell
Yeah,
books.
but the original tweet was saying, write it
Yep.
and put it on a cover you like.
Yep.
It was literally about fulfilling the author's vision.
Yeah. And J. Manfred Weichsel has a great follow-up thread where he talks about, he's like, I didn't say just slap any old cover on it. I said put a cover on it that I like. And here's some of my covers. I like them. A lot of people don't, but they're what I want on my books. Like, I'm making this thing. It's sort of my creative thing. Here they are. And he had a really great thread about why he does covers the way he does. And I think his covers are great because they stand out and they communicate what kind of books he writes. Right? If you pick up one of his books and you read it, you have basically no right to be offended given what's on the cover. So I thought his thread was great.
My first experience reading something from Weichsel was in Corona-chan.
Okay.
And it took me completely by surprise, right? Because I had none of that context.
Yeah. So one other thing too, well, actually, maybe I'll get into it later because Jesse has a couple other things to say here. So he says, I'm familiar with half-baked books with goofy covers, friends begging me to promote it when it doesn't even begin to have readable prose, and they need a lot of advice and a slap on the face, but this isn't for them, it's for procrastinators. So again, sort of bringing back the conversation to its original context. How do I start? Is this even possible for me to do, right? Because if only those people hadn't just simply slapped their simple crap on Amazon, huh? So, and then Jesse elaborates, right? And I think he has a longer thread here kind of talking about his friend's manuscript and the idea of sort of just an individual writing a book and having it as a thing just for themselves and maybe some friends, and that's okay, right? I think that's great. But Jesse points out, I have this friend who has this manuscript, and even if it wasn't up to some standard, if he could just put it online, then some people could enjoy it. Okay, so then Larry Correia sort of rightly points out a downside to this, but again, I feel like he's sort of missing the context of this conversation. He says, yeah, but you're forgetting the downside. If you put a substandard work out that lingers, when you do something good, people remember you for your previous half-baked thing and don't give your good stuff a fair shake. So it's important to be conscious of your brand when you are trying to build your brand as an author or something.
Yep, to make a career, to try and
or to make a thing of it.
Yep. And I disagree with this premise. If you have a book that is not up to scratch, right? It's your first one, you put it out there, and a reader reads it, hates it, and says, "Well, that wasn't for me.
Yep.
I'm never reading that again. I'm never recommending it to anybody." And then say you write a second book or a third book, and it's better for you having done the first one because you've actually done something.
Yep.
That same reader is not necessarily going to say, well, that book was crap. They're going to say, other people seem to like this book. It's got good reviews.
Yeah.
Other people, there are more readers than just the ones who read your first crap book.
Yep.
And those readers will persuade that reader to give your next thing a shot, right?
Yep.
If they even remember that they disliked your first one.
Yeah. There's a couple other things that's a really good point. There's a couple other things I want to hit on here. I mean, even really successful read through of a series is very low. So like for you, if you write a book and then like you write a sequel, like 50% of the people who read the first book reading the second one would be like a miraculously good read through. So that's like the best case scenario.
Yep.
And I think in general, the biggest thing here is that Larry's still sort of missing the context of the conversation. So I've kind of said, and I would say now that I'm kind of in the camp of I'm writing and doing my sort of artistic creative projects for fun, maybe with the hope of making some money in the future, but I'm not like making day-to-day decisions about how I spend my time with trying to optimize making money.
Yeah.
I'm still concerned about brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely made decisions about what I put up, like even like what I share on my Twitter,
Fixing covers.
like fixing covers. So I think about brand. So it's not like I totally disagree with the sentiment. But again, it's like, what about that person who just has one book?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy for Larry as a professional writer to think, yeah, I'm just going to keep writing. It's like I think there are people who just have one book.
Mm-hmm.
I might not have more than a couple more books in me.
Yeah, and Fiona says it depends on reader tastes.
Yep.
So you have just one book, and one person thinks it's crap, and another is like, "This is great," and they're gonna sell your book.
Yeah, there's a lot of other aspects to this too. I mean, you could you could walk the line in different ways here too. You could have a friend who knows something, like a friend with an English degree, edit your book, and then just put like a super simple, not offensive but also not good cover on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a hard time. And then like and then you sell it to your friends and family, because one really nice thing about putting your book on Amazon is that it's really easy for other people to read. So just a little anecdote about this. When I wrote my first book and I published it on Amazon, I published it in May of 2019. So it's been almost 3 years. 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost 4 years. And,
my fingers.
Yep, almost 4 years. And when I put it out, I sold a couple copies of it to coworkers. And I don't know if they read it. I know for sure one of my coworkers read a few chapters of it and said that he liked it. And this is a coworker who would not have told me that he liked it if he didn't. So he's a very opinionated guy. And if that book had only existed as like a Word document, there is no way that he would have read it. But because it was on Kindle, and actually because it was in Kindle Unlimited, and he had a Kindle Unlimited subscription, it was basically risk-free, no, like zero effort for him to get my book onto his device and read it. And that's just a totally separate thing from marketing, trying to sell your book, trying to find readers, right? So, I mean, I would make the argument, even if it's like your one book and you just want an easy way to let your friends and family read it, self-publish.
Yeah.
And that idea is going to, get people like Larry's, it's going to rustle their jimmies, because I think what we're going to see here is that they're kind of coming at this from we want to gatekeep, we want institutions to control what gets published kind of attitude. But you can't deny the mechanics of Amazon for doing that. So so you can totally do that, totally separate from this conversation of, am I putting out a substandard thing that's going to damage my brand? I think this is just totally so far out of how Larry thinks about this that he just doesn't see that case. But I think it's valid.
Yes.
Is there any chats that we want to talk about?
No, let's keep going.
Okay. So this guy, Sean Hannafin, has some really good comments on this. The minuscule amount of people that may refuse to read your future work because you once put out some inferior crap is hardly worth worrying about. And Larry just denies this. Jesse points out, I mean, your readers forgave you. That's kind of a sick burn. And then then he's just saying like, and I think this is a point I would raise is like, will it actually be read at all? Like, will it just not be read, or will it be read and remembered poorly? Um, and I think that's the view that I have, and we've expressed before, is like, people seem to be concerned about like, and trying to like suppress what they consider to be substandard.
Mhm.
But basically the situation now is that there's so much crap that basically nothing will get noticed unless you actively promote it. So I think Jesse makes a good point here. Is like, if you put something out bad, it doesn't really hurt anything. Like, nobody's gonna notice it. You know, you could self-publish something really awful, and then a couple years later, try again and build an entirely separate new audience, and nobody's gonna remember.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they could find it.
The one,
if they worked at it.
yeah.
Suppose,
I mean, the one downside I could see is if you sort of taught Amazon that your book sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even then, there's so many things that you need to do like outside of the Amazon recommendation algorithm to sell your book as an author, that I honestly don't think that would be like the deciding factor to whether your next try would be successful or not.
Yep.
Amazon is not going to sell your book for you, even if you do everything right.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a concern. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about
No,
this?
I wanted to talk about Lamplighters.
Yeah, so El Jaji, Lamplighter, has an interesting comment. Actually, let's see here, maybe. Yeah, so she said that people would remember things as bad. They remember, they talk about it, they warn people away. She says she used to give books by some of her friends to another one of her friends, and then he won't take any indie books from me anymore because too many of them turned out to be of poor quality. And this is just really messed up. I don't think it really has anything to do with the discussion at hand.
I don't think that second part does. I think the first part does, kind of, because she's responding to the question.
But it's more of a general thing than like you're horsing things up for you.
Yeah. I think she's assuming that the people who read the horrible book were invested enough to talk about it, to actually leave a review. There are ways to mitigate that. You can lower the cost.
Mm-hmm.
You can make sure that the blurb communicates well what your book is going to be about. If it's a quality problem, then some readers will say this has a lot of errors in it in their review, and then some readers will be like, okay, I'll give it a shot anyway. And then they went into it aware of that, right? So it only matters if it makes the reader angry. Yeah. And then they campaign, right?
Yeah. And the caveat to that would be, if you have a bunch of people who buy or start your book and they don't finish it, you're going to teach the Amazon algorithm that your book is bad. But again, I would say I don't really think that's a huge factor, because Amazon, even if you do everything right, is not going to just send people at your book.
Yeah.
So
in the ideal world, Amazon would do that, but there's just too much stuff.
Yeah.
Amazon is promoting stuff that it knows is a sure sell.
Yeah.
You as an author are directing people to where they can buy your book. That person goes to your page following a specific link, and then they look at the reviews. That's usually how you actually sell a book.
Yeah, I would say you have to get pretty big before Amazon is going to do much lifting for you at
Yeah.
all, especially outside of the immediate vicinity of your release of your
Mhm.
book. Like a couple months after you've released your book, you're on your own, basically. So yeah,
And say your first book is crap and your second book is a overnight bestseller sensation. Amazon's going to pick up on that and they'll
yeah,
promote your book, even though your
yeah,
first book got such
yeah.
bad, horrible
Might
algorithms.
might not promote your first book, but
Yep.
they'll promote your second one. Okay, so the discussion continues. Didn't you read them? Okay, and then here we get to the point. It says that guy probably didn't. That's the point, I think. I'm not sure what this is referring to, but he says, and this I think is kind of his problem. Why he's sort of upset about this. He says, seriously, man, there's actually a crisis in self-pub world now because of the sea of badness. And it's about 1 to 2 years out from getting a whole lot worse, with bad actors flooding the KU market with mass-produced AI spam books. Okay, so here's the thing. I published my book 4 years ago, and even at that point, there was so much stuff out there that basically you have no hope of getting seen when you publish.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really think, like I cannot count in any way on Amazon selling my book for me. The people who see my book are people who I'm bringing in through Twitter, through YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
through other places. So it doesn't really matter to me how much other crap there is out there on Amazon.
Yeah. The idea, I think his analogy of a sea is probably apt.
Mm-hmm.
There is a level of just mass not up to quality,
Mm-hmm.
not reflecting any kind of
Mm-hmm.
form or function, stuff that has seriously formatting issues that prevent, like, are preventative. And then the idea that that the sea level is going to rise, it doesn't change anything. It's just more of that. You still need to surface above that.
And here's the other thing. So there's this sea of badness. So maybe he's worried about the Kindle marketplace getting flooded with these terrible, like badly formatted, MS Paint cover stuff that's giving all indie publishing a bad name. But here's the deal. There's also a sea of perfectly competent stuff that, thousands and thousands and thousands of books that are perfectly competent, great covers, and sell way more than your book is ever going to.
Mm-hmm.
And you're competing with them too, right? I mean, if you go into any of these like sci-fi categories, I mean, the top sellers in those categories are like books that just launched that are selling thousands and thousands of copies a day, right? And there are tons of those books, right? Amazon is not going to recommend your book randomly to some random new reader who hasn't read something in your circle of indie authors.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like Fiona Wolf does aggressive searches with minus terms and
because she's actually read like all of that stuff already. So she's looking for new stuff.
She has to look. Amazon's not recommending to her.
Yeah. But
or at least not at the rate that she's consuming.
But there's like readers like Fiona Wolf who are going out looking for everything. And then there's, so she's like maybe 1 out of 10 readers. And then there's like 9 out of 10 who just read the most popular stuff. And they're literally never going to see
Right.
your stuff. Amazon is never going to recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, I really have trouble getting worked up about this when, like, for me, it's a moot point. I see this more as like he sees this as a threat to him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his works. And I forget whether he is, I know he has a lot of books that Baen publishes.
Yeah.
And I forget whether he has some self-published or
People
like
are saying
smaller.
that he's TradPub.
Yeah. So
I
I
the
don't
point
get
that
it.
I want to make here is that the average reader is already suspicious of indie works. That suspicion is not necessarily going to increase. It's just going to be bolstered by flood of AI inferior bad actor product, right? Which already exists. Just neglect to feed out erotica, right? In any search, right? If someone reads indie, they are going to rely on reviews from other readers, things that readers say. And that is what is going to pull people out of like that muck, right? That sea of badness. That's how the good stuff rises to the top, right? And I'm not saying that it rises that way due to Amazon algorithm type stuff. Because as we said, we don't think that the algorithm is going to help you unless you're already very big. But additional reviews helps a reader say, should I buy this book? So if they follow the link, if they find your page somehow, then they scroll down to the reviews and they see this one. I can have some measure of trust that this is not going to be throwing my money into something that is of poor quality or not entertaining. And then if they have a blogger, someone like me, or a booktuber, or if they're involved in book Twitter, they look to see what other people are reading and take direct recommendations from people that they trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that direct recommendation is the most important thing, in my opinion.
Yep. So
that's how basically my book sold. What it has is the direct recommendation of other indie authors that are like one order of magnitude or less more successful than I am.
Yeah.
Right. Not by somebody like Larry Correia promoting it, but people who are, bigger audiences. They're selling more books. They have more readers that are following them on Twitter, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, there's some good comments in the chat. Sam Goyer's got some good comments.
Okay.
There is one, he says, unknown indie authors need personal blogs and social media with direct links. Also networking with other indie authors, perhaps review and market each other's works. Exactly.
Caveat to this is those authors have to read it.
Yeah. It's absolutely meaningless just to retweet somebody else's book. I mean, next to meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I guess some visibility is better than nothing. But
if the readers who are following an author because they like that author don't trust that author to recommend books that they actually like, then they'll just scroll right past it.
If it's somebody who just retweets a whole bunch of stuff, then all those retweets mean is I'm just retweeting this just to retweet it. If you retweet stuff that you've actually read and recommend, or that you know the author and can vouch for them, then it means something. And like retweeting with a comment saying, hey, I read this and liked it, is worth a million times more than just a retweet.
Yeah. Well, and part of Lamplighter's problem was not, by her admission,
Yeah.
was not vetting as closely works of friends.
Yeah.
So you have to be genuine about
Yeah.
and not like give it an easy pass.
Yeah.
Which like is easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
I do positive reviews,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't review if I don't like the book.
Yep.
Which means that if I read a book and I didn't like it, or I didn't like it enough to write 1,000 words about it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have content to post.
Yep.
It would be much easier for me to
Yep.
just blah, get some words out there.
Yep.
Promote this indie book, even though it didn't hit quite right for me, right?
Yep.
Because I don't have content. There is a pressure online to be producing content all the time, but I want to take seriously my recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
I want other people to take them seriously.
Yeah. Sam Gore's got another comment. Larry Correa is a curmudgeon, but he's a good man. He offers free writing advice all the time. Yeah, and I mean, again, here we're not trying to minimize good stuff that he's doing, but I'm kind of tired, and I'm not saying that this is Sam's attitude or anything, but I'm kind of tired of this attitude where there's like these big famous accounts on Twitter, and I have a long thread about this that I wrote actually back in, I think, August of last year, where I kind of bemoan this, like when if you're, say, a new author and you're told, okay, you need to market your book on Twitter, you're commonly told, okay, you have to interact with big accounts. That's how you gain followers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these big accounts, they're not really beholden to anybody because they're actually big and famous, and for good reason or whatever. But they often basically have these really abrasive takes, really abrasive followings. Interacting with them can be really unpleasant, and like sometimes they sort of just jump into things and criticize, right? I would say I would have cut Larry some more slack. Well, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if Larry had just posted that original comment about like, hey, it's important to think about making money, like not just write and self-publish, but have a plan for making money, right? And then other people had jumped in and said no, right? It was other people sort of in this context of being encouraging, and he jumps in and says, no, you have to think about money, right? But anyway, I don't like the idea of these big accounts being like, oh, well, they do all this good stuff, so they're allowed to just go around being rude.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Well, like even in response to you on Twitter connecting his behavior with Jeffro's was met with, well, Jeffro.
That's just Jeffro.
Right. It's like,
yeah.
And then well,
it's like this big account is rude or whatever. And I mean, everybody is welcome to do what they want with their Twitter. If you want to be rude on Twitter, that's fine. I'm not saying it should be illegal, but it's like, big account is rude or says something that is sort of really violently butts up against our vision, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but it's like, then we push back, and then the response is like, oh, well, they do so much, they're just a curmudgeon.
It's part of their shtick.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I get it, we're pushing back, right?
Yeah. I'm not offended by his tone. Mm-hmm. I think it doesn't help anything. Kind of actually Wexel commented on my first tweet about this. Mm-hmm. Saying he said that Well, let's see. My tweet was responding to his tweet, was responding to your tweet, which was he was saying that we would have like a literary boom if writers believed that readers would care about their work and then actually went out and wrote it. I think something like that. And I said the third thing would be that people thought reading fiction was important.
Yep.
And he commented saying, I suppose that it would be helpful if readers did not have the impression that indie authors were like
hucksters or
at each other's throats, and always debating writing advice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing that like we want the idea of reading something indie to not have this baggage attached to it.
Yeah. Yep.
And we want people to do what they want, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's working for Larry Correia.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for other people.
Yeah.
But it is like David said, putting up against how we our vision, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, we talk about this sort of idea that it would be a good thing if you could have this sort of decentralized thing, and you know, a lot of sort of like hobbyist fiction authors getting read widely and stuff. But I mean, I don't want to say that, you know, there shouldn't be professional authors either, right? That's not it. So anyway, that's just kind of our thought. And yeah, I want to be able to push back when people do this kind of stuff. So, and it's just good. It's good for engagement, right? People like drama. You know, we are trying to build an audience to be able to promote what we want to promote. So when this stuff, kind of interesting stuff like this crosses our timeline, we kind of realized back in November when we were engaging with Jeff, I was like, okay, we have a big enough audience now that we can engage with this stuff, and we have people that find value in the way that we're pushing back.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know.
Yeah, we're I think the point that we're trying to make is not that we object to his attitude as much as like not his attitude about like his aggressiveness and abrasiveness as much as his treatment and underlying beliefs in the way that indie publishing works.
Right. Well, it's a little bit of both, right?
Sure.
I wish people wouldn't be rude on Twitter.
Right.
TJ says, I think Christian authors should not be rude, but whatever. I would like Twitter to be less rude. That's, you know, that's wishful thinking. But, you know, I would like Twitter to be less rude, so I'm going to push back when people are rude. But also, I wanted to talk about the context, which was encouraging people to write and publish.
Yeah.
Without having to get it perfect.
Yeah. I feel like there's some other things that Larry said that also sort of come at the aspect of gatekeeping a bit. Like,
well, it was this, I think this I think the tweet where he was talking about the AI potential coming, this is kind of shows his desire to control what is even published.
Yeah. Saying you shouldn't publish if your stuff is
there needs,
what did he say, garbage?
There needs to be this minimum level of quality that somebody is deciding that if we don't have this sort of control, there's going to be this crisis.
Yes, and the idea that the market is flooded with poor quality stuff is somehow pulling down everybody else, and I don't have that
and
feeling.
pulling down him. I think
Yeah.
that that would, you know, not to mind read, but I think that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just don't agree with that, because kind of like we explained before, in our opinion, and the way self-publishing is now, it's just there's no there's no discoverability.
Yeah.
Basically. So, you know, to sell anything, you have to bring traffic, you have to promote. So it doesn't matter if there's a bunch of crap there too.
Right.
It just doesn't. And you know, like what you're doing with Periapsis Press is like, we are promoting this ourselves. You are doing heavy lifting in terms of writing reviews and promoting stuff, because that's how you have to promote it.
Yep.
We can't rely on the algorithm. We can't rely on, we can't rely on Con Inc. We can't rely on Matt Walsh to promote indie books. We can't really even rely on bigger, more famous authors like Larry Correia to lift people up, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? If I had published my first book and it just took off, right, and I was selling, if I sold 1,000 copies when it released and I was selling 10 copies a day, I would not be screwing around with any of this. I would be writing.
Sure, yeah.
I would be writing more and building my own little creative project without a care in the world, right? So yeah, these people don't owe us anything. They don't believe they owe us anything. I don't think they do owe us anything. We don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
The way we have to promote is basically
doing cool things
ourselves, and word of mouth, actual real recommendations from each other.
Yep. And with Periapsis Press, that's the goal, is to make something that is not a store. It's not a platform for readers to buy from. It's a place where people can find stuff and then go wherever the author recommends you buy their book from. I try to do some guest reviews, not because like I want more content, but because I want to promote other places where you can find good reviews too. I want to say, hey, this person has an opinion that I trust, right? That I found their analysis of this particular book that I read a good one. Occasionally I do guest reviews of books that I have not read, but I've read other stuff that author has done, and I've reviewed that stuff. Always by a reviewer that I trust in that context. So there's not the idea with Periapsis Press is to provide something for readers that is not Amazon. Because with Amazon, Larry's concern is a valid one. If you go on there, you're not going to be able to find easily the wheat from the chaff or whatever. But if you go to a review site and you pull it up and it's all positive reviews and you can scroll through the covers, you can say, this one looks good, or this sounds interesting to me. Follow the link, buy it, and with a level of confidence that reviewer's opinion is going to be helpful to you, as opposed to finding that link, right? That link that takes you directly to that page that you then look at the reviews on that page. This would be a way that a reader could browse content of a certain quality. I think that was pretty succinct. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm catching up on Twitter notifications here. Sorry.
A couple of comments that I wanted to bring back up. Fiona Wolf said that she wished Mr. Korea would do more book bombs. They really did help others get a bit of that spotlight, even if only for a moment. That would be great. But like we said, we feel that bigger audience authors with bigger platforms or Con Inc. or whatever, they don't necessarily owe anything to smaller creators.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because, and I appreciate the idea of having someone big with a big audience promote your stuff. That has appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about advertising on stuff like what would that cost, and
yeah,
that kind of thing. But ultimately, the problem is the same with Lamplighter's comment, right? If the audience isn't looking to that author for recommendations or that personality,
yeah,
they're not going to, even if they do promote it, there has to be a audience desire to be recommended to in that situation, and a trust in that person's recommendation.
Yep.
And these bigger people with bigger audiences don't have time to read quite as much.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily have trust in book recommendations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, so Steven Crowder, right? Why would I think that Steven Crowder would be able to recommend sci-fi?
Yeah.
Right. Even if, say, Steven Crowder read my book and said, "Hey, this is a good book. You should read it." Why would he be somebody that could recommend it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like for everybody involved, there has to be this like trust where somebody somebody goes first and tries something out and says, "Oh, this is good," right? And some people like their book, so now their recommendation has weight, right? It's just it all takes work.
Mm-hmm.
It all takes work. There's no, I don't, raw visibility doesn't count for much. So you have to think about what it would mean, what it would mean for somebody's recommendation to actually accomplish something.
Yeah.
I didn't sell, I sold maybe like 10 copies of my book in the first few months of it being out. And then the first Black Friday sale that Hans, well, it wasn't the first one that he had run, but it was like the first one that had run after my book was out. I had lowered my book to 99 cents for Black Friday. I wasn't part of the sale. And I found some tweet. It might have been Declan Finn kind of saying, just, it was like a general call for like books or something. I forget what it was. I try not to spam my links, but I ended up posting a link to my book, and then Alexander Helene retweeted it and said, "I read this and it was really good." Now this, so like a month before, Alexander had read my book and tweeted out a recommendation of it. He left the first rating on Amazon, and he tweeted when he started reading it, and I mean, that didn't sell any copies, right? And he had a couple thousand followers at the time. And he even mentioned my book in his mailing list, and that didn't sell any copies, right? But it was that timing of him tweeting, and he tweeted his recommendation was really good. It was he said something like, "This book kept me up at night reading, and I don't say books are good unless I really mean it." And it was like that confluence of him saying that, like, really nice recommendation, not just this is a good book, but like something specific, I think. And it had a review on it at that point, right? Like before, it didn't have any reviews or ratings, so it had that one review, and it was a 4-star review, right? He didn't even give me a 5-star review for my first review. And it was 99 cents, and people were buying a bunch of books in Hans's sale, and it sold like 50 copies over that first couple days, right? And so it's all like a confluence of different things, right, that have to come together for something to sell, right?
Yeah. Just catching up on chat, which I should have done while you were talking, but
Yeah,
I was
that's
listening to you.
TJ, when you're talking about we have the numbers to do one, but how to get it organized, are you talking about a book bomb or something
Oh,
else?
maybe he was talking about, I said my site was not a platform, like a store.
Oh, yeah. I don't really think that's the problem either. Because, I mean, everybody has an Amazon account.
Yeah.
When you buy an ebook on Amazon, it comes to your Kindle app, which you already have. Whereas, like, buying through another store, you'd have to sideload things.
I think Paula Ritchie was working on, not like a store, but she called it a digital con.
IndieGen.
IndieGen.
Yep.
I know that had some
okay
technology hiccups, but
TJ was talking about a bomb.
Oh, a bomb.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do this somewhat, right? When somebody launches a book, we do a pretty good job of everybody retweeting it. And I'm definitely more likely to buy a random book when it's being launched within the first couple days, because I like the idea of being part of getting it up the sales ranks, and sending a message to Amazon that it's something that people want.
Yeah.
And I mean, you kind of were helping with some of those books that launched during the summer.
Yeah, I did the right? Indie Summer Spotlight, which I don't have any numbers on whether or not that helped at all, but it was fun.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. There is some, I would say Amazon does more promotion at launch. So like if you've read other works of the author, like when they have a new book come out, it's more likely to actually sort of explicitly recommend it.
Yep. And Amazon does know what I read. I get lots of recommendations for stuff that I've already read, mostly because Amazon doesn't know that I read it because I got an art copy or a review copy.
I don't know if it knows about like our linked accounts, because we have some different books that are
that's true
linked.
Yeah. So yeah, the algorithm works if you as a reader are quite focused. I feel like I'm quite focused as a reader.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we wanted to say about this.
I should expand on that. Amazon is recommending to me based on my data, not based on whether or not X book has X number of reviews, or like that kind of thing.
Well, it does use some of both.
I know it does, but like because we were saying that the Amazon algorithm isn't going to just show your book to anybody.
Yeah.
Like it is showing it to me based on my
Yeah.
data.
Well, and that's the tricky part, I think, is like a lot. So I don't want to sound like I'm walking back what I said before. A lot of what I said before about Amazon isn't going to promote your book for you. That's especially true if it's like your first book and you have no other also bots, or it has no idea of like how you fit in with other authors. It will start to do a little bit more for you once it has a better handle on where you fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to sell your book for you even then. It can start doing a little bit of promotion.
You might start to see it in like the also bots list or recommended for
or like you get those emails from Amazon where it's like, here's some books you might be interested in. That's where they'll show up when you launch. Like if you've read a book from one author and then they put out another one, it will probably be in an email to people, even if you're not like very big.
Yeah.
But again, that's not really finding new readers necessarily.
I think we've said pretty much everything that we.
Yeah. Should we elaborate a little bit more on our positive vision?
Yeah.
Because I think part of this, this isn't all just about him being rude, right?
Right.
It's the sort of attitude of, if you are writing or publishing, you have to be making money. You have to be thinking about making money and reaching as wide of an audience as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do X, Y, and Z before you even think about publishing, etc.
Yeah.
So we have this vision of, in the future, there being a lot of small independently published authors. So hopefully bigger than where people are now.
Yeah.
Like maybe instead of selling hundreds of copies, everybody's selling thousands of copies. But I, not necessarily, the goal isn't necessarily everybody's making a living from writing.
Yeah.
I would like people like me who have writing as a hobby, but not their main thing, be able to get their work in front of the right people, right? More of the right people. And how do we do that, right? Because we can't expect Amazon to do it. We can't expect Koenig to do it, whereas we can't expect bigger authors to do it. So how do we do that? It is just somehow building a culture where reading indie is mainstream, and there are a lot more recommendations being done.
Mm-hmm.
Internet friends recommending books to each other.
Yeah.
Friends recommending indie books to each other, right? Nothing getting crazy and gigantic and out of control, and algorithm snowballing, but just a bigger awareness of things.
I'd like to have a sort of cultural movement towards indie, because I think people are fleeing tradpub, traditional media in general. And if we can present indies, whether that's under the Iron Age banner or just in general, as an alternative that is fulfilling those same sorts of things that those audience members, the readers, wanted out of traditional media and weren't getting. That would be ideal. And to also get people who've already abandoned that, not just people who are currently leaving that because we've reached a cultural point where people can't tolerate it anymore, but also those people who already left, to get them back into the reading habit, and to communicate the cultural importance of reading fiction specifically, taking time to consume a story to digest it in a slower, more more personal format. I think that's important. I think this year the website has been all reviews, news related to authors that I've reviewed, specifically stuff that they are currently doing that is going to lead to more things that readers can read, and not about like drama, and then like reading related things like author interviews and events like the summer spotlight. Let me know if you guys are interested in me doing that again. I'm on the fence about whether or not to do it again.
So you mentioned it was kind of hard to tell if it
Yeah.
accomplished a whole lot.
Yep. But I've been considering doing a couple of blog articles, kind of related to topical things like the importance of reading, like in defense of sci-fi and fantasy, that kind of thing. Because I feel like those sort of maybe more philosophical things are an important aspect of what I'm trying to do culturally, maybe, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something that I'm doing is I'm working towards being able to do some really cool visual art and other sort of related stuff to help promote writing. I think people have brought this up on Twitter before. It's really hard to promote writing with the writing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you spend an afternoon making a painting or like a cool 3D model of a spaceship or something, like you can throw that up on social media and you get this nice visceral reaction to it, but you can't really do that with writing. A lot of people, the most that they have to promote their books visually, when visual art is really important on social media, is they only have the cover. And I'd like to, I'm building it for me, but I'm building it with the intention of being able to help other people with this too. So that's something that I'm working towards. And then, not to go too deep into it, but I think so that's sort of the positive view of what we have, what we're doing. I think the negative view, what people like Jeffro and what Larry was sort of advocating for, is I think those people want some kind of publisher like authority. So like they look at how TradPub has kind of gone to heck, and they're like, what we need like, the solution isn't indie publishing. It's like, we need to get control of publishing again.
Yep.
So we can enforce our ideas of what good quality is.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the case of Jeffro, he has this idea of a canon of work. So if you're writing fantasy, you need to be basing your thing off this sort of canonical body of work that came before you, right?
Yeah.
So they want to set up probably themselves or their friends in these positions of authority to govern what people can and can't publish.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a little bit extreme way of putting it, but I think we sort of see the evidence for it. And I don't think that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have the, like we've said, the sort of default position of a indie or self-published work is just total obscurity,
mm-hmm.
undiscoverability. It takes work to bring it out and get it in front of people. So we collectively can kind of be the the gatekeepers, or instead of gatekeepers, like the promoters of what we like.
Yeah.
Right. It's up to me and my friends to promote what we like rather than to keep out what we don't like.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the contrasting vision that we're promoting here. And along with this is kind of a libertarian view of, if you like X thing that I don't like, that's fine. Right? I don't really have an interest in saying that that we shouldn't be publishing underwater basket weaving fiction, right? If you like that thing, that's fine. I don't care if you're promoting that, as long as I have the mechanism for promoting the stuff that I like, and you aren't trying to say, no, you can't do that. You have to promote underwater basket weaving fiction instead, which is kind of what is going on with TradPub legacy media type stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's sort of two different views. I see the sort of wanting to be the new authority or new publisher kind of attitude more from people who are like friendly TradPub / indie pub people like Larry, and to a lesser extent people like Jaji in that conversation, Jeff Rowe. I think they kind of have that attitude that, okay, and maybe rightly so, because they're doing good work right now as publishers or with publishers, right? That we can be this new authority, but I don't think that is the only solution.
Yep. Our Periapsis Press is not an attempt to be some sort of gatekeeper or authority, but to say, here's good stuff. It's kind of like what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
To say, to bring people up out of that just sea of badness, because it's not it, like you said, obscurity. The problem is that there is a lot of bad stuff and you just land in obscurity with it. But if we have a platform to put the good stuff on that makes it findable, that's what Periapsis Press is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is there any other comments that we want to talk about? Oh, I see Draco's got a question. He asks, what if I want to write something? You see that? What if I want to write something that isn't strictly fantasy or sci-fi, that's just a fun adventure cartoon in prose? Yeah, I mean that's part of the idea, right? I don't like the idea of saying, here's this genre that you have to write in, or here's this genre that you write in. It's a very TradPub thing.
Yeah.
And it's a very right to market kind of thing.
Yes.
When you can write some weird thing that might be like unmarketable, but it might be cool, right? It might be that unique thing that people like. So my book is like this weird combination of, everybody calls it hard sci-fi. I didn't think of it as hard sci-fi when I wrote it, but it's hard-ish sci-fi and like supernatural horror.
Yeah. And
like everybody who's read it and reviewed it positively talks about that being unique. Right? So it might be niche, but that unique nature of it, I think, is something that people appreciate. And I think it would basically be unpublishable. Like, I have no idea who would have published my book.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That is the wonderful thing about indie self-publishing, is that you're not beholden to someone else's idea of marketability.
Yep.
You can write what you think is fun, and then you can go out and find other people who think that it's fun. And you get this amazing connection with your readers that you just don't have in TradPub. unless you're doing your own marketing, which more and more people end up doing, I think, because TradPub is really just selling to their base. They're not really going out and finding new readers for you. Draco also mentioned money. I think that
this is tricky.
Yep. More money can potentially make you more appealing, I guess. You can spend more money on a cover or on editing or on ads.
Yep.
I don't honestly think it'll make or break you.
Right. It's like anything else. So the thing that is tricky about all of this is like you could do everything right and just due to chance your book doesn't break through.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't mean that it was bad advice, but it's like the things that are sort of necessary to being successful aren't, you won't necessarily be successful if you do them. So
right. And like, why did Larry make it big?
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors at play.
Yep. I think one of the reasons that he made it big actually is he wrote something unique that wouldn't have been sort of traditionally something that you would have come up with to write if you were doing the whole right to market thing. Yep. Right. My understanding is that his idea was basically, what if you took the kind of like alien fodder type characters from like a monster horror movie, but then actually made them competent so they could kill the monsters and like know how guns work. And he basically wrote his book and then he would sell it at these gun shows that he went to, because he's professionally a gun dealer. And it was really popular. Like all these people thought it was like this really cool, unique thing that there was this neat story where people actually knew how to use guns. Because like if you're a gun person, you just know that they're not portrayed accurately at all in most stories. But like this is the kind of thing where it's like, what would it mean, using his advice you couldn't figure that out before you published it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe you could run it by some friends or something, but like if you were Larry Correia now,
and picture yourself as an agent or as a lead editor in some publishing, going, you want to sell it to gun aficionados? That's not going to work.
Seems pretty niche.
That audience doesn't buy books, right? Like that, and because that's what the percentages say, right? Men and conservatives,
gun owners,
nonfiction.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously he has a much bigger audience than that group of people now, but it's like it takes off in a niche, right? The other elephant in the room, like Harry Potter. Some people will say Harry Potter's like super derivative, but I mean, I would argue that was like a pretty new genre when she wrote
it. It wasn't its own subgenre.
Yeah.
To the extent that it is now.
Yeah, but that sort of, it's this unique thing is part of why it was successful.
There's been boarding school fiction for a lot longer than there's been magic school. Yeah.
But there's even like within magic school, I think if you could argue that, even if you argued that existed before her, there's lots of elements in her books that aren't in those.
Yeah.
Right. They're like sort of mystery thriller books, and they sort of defy categorization on a lot of levels. So I don't know.
A lot of the things that she did are now genre tropes of magic school fiction.
Yeah.
Where before it was probably more like boarding school fiction with magic.
Yep.
I think that's it.
All right. Before we go, I'm going to shill some books here. So.
You've got a specific tab shared
Yep.
right now. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So, I was talking a bit tonight about my book. This is Uriel's Revenge. It's a sci-fi horror, sci-fi story, kind of a sci-fi dark adventure story with a cool supernatural horror twist. And this is my first book that I ever wrote. So don't let people say that you have to throw away your first book and never let it see the light of day. This book I wrote and made some good edits too, and I've made revisions to it since putting it out. But I mean, it's more or less what I wrote, and you know, haven't sold a ton of copies, but people like it. It just got 20 ratings and have had some nice reviews and positive feedback from other indie authors this year. So that's exciting. You can check it out. It's only on Kindle right now, $2.99 to buy, or it's also on Kindle Unlimited. I don't have a paperback out yet, but that might be coming later this year, depending on how priorities fall.
We got things worked out with the Periapsis Christmas.
So a lot of the work that I did with Periapsis Christmas was towards finishing up tools that I started for doing paperback publishing for my own books. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So there's Uriel's Revenge. There's also the second book in my series, The Fountain Mechanism. And this is kind of an interesting book because it is not a direct sequel. There's a framing story that is a sequel, but most of the book takes place actually before Uriel's Revenge and kind of follows some different characters and fills in some different details and sets up a neat conflict that is going to bring all the characters together for the third book. And if you have already read The Fountain Mechanism and you liked it, I would really appreciate more ratings because it only has one rating. And different reviews. People have thought different things about it. It's a very different book from Uriel's Revenge, but I think it's a pretty good book too. So there's that. And then of course, Periapsis Christmas. Definitely check this out. This is available in both Kindle and paperback and has some really great Christmas stories, but I think all of these are stories that you could enjoy any time of the year. Run the gamut from fantasy to horror to sci-fi, and it's just a really nice. What are you putting it back up for?
Because you have it up on the screen.
Well, I can hold up the paperback too.
Okay.
And the paperback is just this really nice little paperback book that it just feels so good to hold in your hand. We need to get actual author copies.
I know we've still got that for sale.
I was really disappointed to find out that the proof copies come really fast, but then the author copies take several weeks to come.
Yeah.
Really disappointing. But anyway, yeah. So and it's $2.99 for Kindle and $10 for paperback. I think both of those are great deals. So yeah, if you like what we're talking about and you want to encourage us in our vision, check out our books. And if you do check them out, make sure to leave reviews. Recommend them to your friends, both real life, online.
Yeah, because that's what we believe matters to other readers is hearing what people who actually read it think. And with Periapsis Christmas, this is very much in the spirit of Periapsis Press.
Yep.
Because neither of us are in it.
Yeah.
It's all authors that we've reviewed. We asked for submissions from people that we had previously reviewed and trusted that their work would be good. And then we chose from those 5 that we liked. And then I edited, and David did the cover and the formatting. And it's just a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. But this is another way in my mind, another way for you as a reader to try out an author, see if their style appeals to you, and then go and see other stuff that we've reviewed of theirs, or go and see their Amazon page directly with all of the stuff that they've written and try something else. So
yeah, there's a couple comments here in the chat about the books. So Draco asks if there are lightsabers in Uriel's Revenge. So there are not lightsabers, but there are actually a lot of swords, and there are like cool like magic swords.
Yeah, magic swords is what I was about to say.
Yeah, so Star Wars is definitely a huge influence on me, and I'm embracing that and being less apologetic about it in the future. So if you like Star Wars and lightsabers, I think you'll like Uriel's Revenge. And Doug Wise mentions quiz at the end of the first couple of chapters on cessationism after the dust of combat clears. That's exactly right, and that is actually not a joke. That is not a joke. If Doug hasn't read Uriel's Revenge, this is a really amazing coincidence, almost miraculous. Enough to make somebody who was a cessationist maybe second guess. Oh, he has. Okay, so so I'm making a meta joke there, but yeah, not a joke at all. So if you are interested in how theology and cessationism and different things might fit into a sci-fi story with magic swords and spaceships and stuff, check out Uriel's Revenge.
Patrick says that he bought the physical copy of Paris's Christmas to go with my copy of Midwest Wood Paneling. It's gorgeous.
Fiona Wolf says it's better to list influences rather than go my book is brand meets brand.
Yeah,
I agree. I would have a lot of trouble using brands to describe Uriel's Revenge. I think influences are better because I can say Frank Peretti, Star Wars.
I think
other classic sci-fi.
What
things.
helps me the most as a reader is stuff, but I
like it has these elements.
Yeah, so like if you said magic swords, demons in space, right? Like those things are like, this sounds interesting to me.
Yeah.
Without giving away anything, because I've read enough that like even small plot hints, sometimes I'm like, oh, I think I know where that is going. And like, I'm like, I don't know if I really want to read a book like that. But if you say it has these things in it, then I'm like, ooh, I wonder how they mash up, right? And like I know Fiona Wolf likes dogs in stories, and actually a lot of readers do, and even traditional media knows this, because there was that game that you were showing me, the Final Fantasy is it
the
new one?
Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, and it's got like this, dramatic music and these dramatic scenes, and then all of a sudden there's the dog. He's like petting the dog.
Yeah,
he's like, good boy.
It's a super dark trailer, but then he stops to pet the dog. It's
like,
great.
They know there are fans that will buy that because there's a dog in it.
Yeah. Patrick asks, is there a place I can go that's Indie Pub Central of positive reviews where I, the reader, can recommend and leave my own reviews on other reviews?
Yes. That is my goal with Periapsis Press. I would like it if other people, like I understand the push to leave reviews on Amazon, and that is helpful on multiple levels, to readers, to indies, to potential algorithm things and tailored recommendations for you personally. But I would really like it if on Periapsis Press there was this trend of commenting your own thoughts on a book that you'd already read, I just added a functionality where you can just hit a button that says recommend this book, and then that will keep a count of how many people
Everybody go on there and click.
You can't do that. So because I want it to be useful for readers to say that it's not just me, but other people also found this book to be entertaining and to have the things that that appeal to multiple readers, not just me. I think that also, like, people often don't know what to comment on review articles, right? Like, oh, this is a good review, right? Like, or I will have to check out that book. But like, all I really would like is for if people say, based on this recommendation, I put this book on my list, or I bought it, and then like come back and say, I read it and this is what I liked, or I liked it, right? It doesn't have to be anything huge or dramatic, but I want other readers to feel like there is a sense in which their opinion matters as much as mine, if that makes sense.
Fiona Wolf also mentions Upstream reviews. I mean, we're here to show our own stuff, not
of course.
Upstream reviews. But they're a good site too, and they have a ton of reviews. And one interesting thing about their site is they have multiple reviews from different people of some of the same books. And I think a lot of their reviews are a lot shorter than the ones at Periapsis Press, but I've noticed that they've gotten a couple in that are more detailed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, definitely check them out. And they've reviewed a lot of other different books from us too.
Yeah.
I know you kind of focus more on like smaller indie books.
Yeah.
Whereas they have a lot of reviews of larger indie books and
some classics too.
Yep. And comics too, right? I think.
Yeah.
Because I think, was that on Upstream Reviews that somebody did an interview with Martina Markota?
Maybe.
They do like some interviews and stuff too. It's a pretty big site now. There's a lot of stuff there. So
yeah,
definitely check them out.
I enjoy comics, but I have trepidation about presenting my opinion about them.
Yeah.
I would, in order to, like, I have a background in literature, so I feel fairly confident in saying this book is good because of X, Y, and Z. I have a lot of like foundational, like structural understanding and literary techniques understanding. I have a lot less of that. I would be relying heavily on my understanding comics book. Like,
yeah, and that's kind of the same with me too. I like comics a lot, but I didn't read them too much growing up, so I just haven't read a lot of them. So I kind of feel like I could say I really like this, but that's about it. There's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't notice or wouldn't understand, especially on the art side, which is, really important.
I don't think you have to understand everything
in
order to say I like this. But if I'm going to be giving a detailed review of something, I want, especially like a longer review, I want to make sure that I am not making a fool of myself, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're gonna cut it off.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for staying up late with us and chatting about this. And again, like we don't have any ill will towards Larry Correia or Jeffro or anything.
I don't know. I have some ill will towards Jeffro.
We're mostly our purpose is to engage with ideas that are adjacent to ours, and sort of say, here's the line between us in what they think and what we think, and to use our platform to promote other indies and stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Have a good night.